The cybersecurity job market is undergoing rapid change. If you're just getting started, learning cybersecurity is already difficult enough. And if you're going to invest all this time and effort required to succeed, you want the peace of mind that you're at least focusing on the right things. Now, in this video, I'm going to share with you the top 3 most future-proof cybersecurity focus areas to help you stay ahead of the curve. My name is Ryan from Elevate Cyber, and I'm a cybersecurity professional with over a decade of experience from multiple Fortune 500 companies to US government and freelancing. Let's get right into the video. So number 1 is cloud security. Now, the nice thing about the cloud is it's already had its initial big burst of adoption and kind of come up. So it's starting to mature at this at the current time of recording this video here in 2025. This is an area that now has some better training and stuff emerging and things like that. So it's a lot more accessible than before, but at the same time, there still is a massive shortage gap of people in the field, including at the senior level, that know this stuff. So just to kind of drive this home, about last year when I was working for Dell as a pen tester, everyone on my team was at the senior level. There were no entry level or junior level people on the team at all. But despite that, and there's 26 of us, only 3 of us did the testing on the cloud side because everyone else was like, yeah, I would love to learn it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So you can bet that if that's the case at the senior level, that is also going to be the case at the entry level where they're fighting over those entry level jobs and things like that. Now, this gap is starting to narrow. So now is the ideal time to really focus in on learning this skill set. If you've been kind of on the fence about it before, I would highly recommend to dig into it. Now, the nice thing as well about cloud security is there is opportunities both on the offensive and defensive side to apply your skill set. So if you want to be a pen tester or red team or something like that, then there's a huge incentive to learn this stuff because all these companies are using it and you're going to be faced with that environment. And if you don't know what to do when you're faced with the cloud environment, you're kind of stuck there in terms of the red team engagement if there's no one on your team that knows. And at the same time, if you're on a pen test and you got to pen test the cloud, well, yeah, you better know how to do that. Otherwise, you can't provide value in that scenario. But then also on the defensive side, there's been a lot of efforts for defenders to really improve the forensic artifacts that are available on the cloud and things like that, and like what's tracked, like the logging and the monitoring. This was something that, several years ago when I first got into cloud was not very fleshed out. There was a lot of gaps, things that they straight up couldn't see simply because the defense wasn't mature enough on the cloud side. Now they've really brought in a lot of defensive solutions that are integrated with the cloud, but it does rely on you having some kind of understanding of this stuff. And the nice thing as well is if you've learned some of this stuff through on-prem, a lot of times you can pretty quickly apply that to the cloud as well, and it will give you a huge leg up in learning that faster. Of course, there are some very cloud-specific stuff, both on the offensive and defensive side as well, which is why you do have to dedicate some time to learning this stuff standalone. One thing that comes to mind is with Azure and AWS and GCP, the way they handle permissions is very granular and a lot more complex than, say, like Active Directory permissions. So there's definitely things that you're going to need to dedicate time to. But you're seeing almost every large company now at least using hybrid multi-cloud environment where they're using a combination of all 3, with Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, maybe even Google Cloud as well, with their on-prem stuff. So it's a kind of hybrid model. You want to understand the traditional network, web, Active Directory, but also bringing in cloud to that can be a huge leg up and definitely something that's going to future-proof you going forward. Now, the second area that I would like to call out is AppSec, application security. And just as we're seeing the emergence of what we call CI/CD on the software development side, so continuous integration, continuous development, basically it's kind of a fancy terminology to say that we're always pushing new code, we're always updating things, we're always iteratively working on our product. Back in the day, if we rewind to maybe a decade ago, the prevalent way to develop software was to have these long release cycles. So you would have the software would release, and then it might be like several months to a year before in some cases, before there was the next version of that software that came with changes. Nowadays, it's much more rapid. These updates are happening constantly. I mean, if you have a cell phone, which I'm sure everyone watching this video does, right? Smartphone. I mean, how often are you getting updates on that thing? If you have a PC, whatever you're watching me through, your device is constantly having updates and things like that because nowadays, in the modern times, we are very rapid in our development. Now, just just as, we need the security testing, we need to make sure that the code that we're deploying is secure. If we are deploying code more frequently, we also need to be testing that for vulnerabilities more frequently. So just as there's continuous development, continuous integration, we need continuous security testing as well. So that is where AppSec comes in, application security. As an AppSec engineer, you are working very closely with the developers. This kind of ties in with what we call DevSecOps. So you're working very closely with those application developers to test the software iteratively. So this is a very hands-on role in terms of being in the trenches with the source code and the developers. And so you need to kind of be able to speak that language as well. I would say this focus area is very ideal for someone that is maybe coming from the software development space. Maybe you're a programmer right now that wants to get into offensive cybersecurity. This is the ideal jumping off point to breaking into cybersecurity. You're going to find yourself pretty well equipped to perform a role like this. But if you just have a passion for looking at things at the source code level, if that's something that interests you, this is also a really good area to focus in on. It's definitely only growing as time goes on. We've seen a lot of exploits. I've been calling this out on my short form content of supply chain attacks and things like that. So looking at some of these CI/CD tools, as you can imagine, if you have this central repository where you're constantly updating the code and pushing that out with automation and all this stuff, that's a very privileged environment. So if that gets compromised, the attackers somehow get access to that CI/CD pipeline. It's for deploying code. So you can deploy some malicious code, like maybe a backdoor or something that's going to give the attackers a secret way into your code base and a secret way into your servers, because code is very powerful. Code can do whatever you want to do as the developer. So if anyone can deploy code in your environment and they're a malicious actor, that's no bueno, right? This has been a really huge emerging attack surface. Attackers are loving this nowadays, these malicious threat actors, APTs and stuff like that. So there's a big demand for securing this side of things. So if you want to future-proof yourself, number 2 suggestion is AppSec. Now, number 3 is actually one that is still niche, but is growing extremely fast, and that is AI security and adversarial machine learning. If you've not been under a rock for the last, I don't know, year and a half, these companies have been moving into AI solutions at the speed of startups. I've never seen anything like this in terms of how quickly and how kind of haphazardly they are being adopted. I guess it does kind of remind me in a sense of like the blockchain craze back in maybe 2017, 2018, where everyone wanted to integrate the blockchain. But I would say this is that on steroids. It's a little bit more extreme here than even that. Like they are really aping into this stuff. And I think that, well, I know that security is very much an afterthought in a lot of what is happening here. And you can tell it, and you can kind of see this if you've been following some of the security research that's come out on the AI side. There were some really alarming vulnerabilities. It reminds me of kind of the Wild West of the kind of the binary exploitation days, like back when you could just do like stack-based buffer overflows with like no protections. It's kind of like that. Like the security is having to be like kind of retrofitted into a lot of this stuff. This is an area, because all these companies are adopting this, there's going to be an extreme demand for people that have this security knowledge of LLMs and things like that, and how to secure these environments. And it's really interesting because it's like a dual attack surface, because AI is kind of conversational, right? Like when I say AI, I'm really talking about LLMs, large language models. So these models, right, they're very language based, as the name would imply. So there's a lot of attacks that are kind of like social engineering. I mean, straight up like social engineering when it comes to some of this stuff, but at the same time, it is still technology. So you have this dual, what I say is like a dual attack surface, where you have like your traditional kind of attacks and kind of way of breaching things that you see with traditional, code and things like that. And we also have this human language element of it too, where you can basically leverage social engineering and stuff like that. So it's a dual attack surface. It's really difficult for them to secure. And on top of that, security is an afterthought. And on top of that, everyone's using it nowadays, all the big companies. So this is an area, there's not as much training for it now, but what that means is there's less competition. If you can learn this stuff, you can start learning now, you are going to very much be future-proofing yourself and ahead of the curve. And yeah, you're not going to worry about work anytime soon. And I wanted to also throw in some honorable mentions as well, because there are some other real standout focus areas in cybersecurity. That's the beauty of this field, is that there are so many lucrative things that you can focus on if you want to future-proof yourself. It's really, even though it's hard to get jobs right now, overall in the market, there's never been more opportunity than now. I do truly believe that in terms of like the different options you have as focus areas. So I want to mention IAM. So that's identity and access management. So the zero trust architecture. And basically the reason for this is, identity is essentially the new perimeter of the world of like remote work and, bring your own device and stuff like that. And the whole software as a service sprawl. I know a lot of companies are forcing people back into the office and things like that again, but there is like a lot of complexity with managing all this stuff now, especially like kind of tying this back to the cloud, right? You have some people that are remote that are using like they have to use the cloud. They have like an on-prem environment as well, so it's like a hybrid cloud on-prem thing. People are bringing their own devices into work. You got all kinds of crazy complications that's going to make like the idea of like IAM, identity and access management, so paramount. And additionally to that is like all the nation state actors, the APTs out there are relentlessly using these phishing campaigns that often start with credential abuse to get that initial access. So this is where this will really come into play, especially the zero trust architecture side of things. And governments and enterprises are pushing zero trust as a mandatory architecture. So if you have an understanding of how to implement this, you focus in on this area, especially when it comes to like some of the more security architecture stuff. It's not like the most beginner friendly to get into from the start, but maybe if you're someone already in cybersecurity and you want to become a security architect, I would say like that is a very future-proofed area as well. You're always going to have a job with stuff like that. In addition to that, MFA and things like that, we're starting to move towards a passwordless future where, you're seeing it with the big companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft already start to move away from passwords. So having an understanding of these different solutions and how they can kind of replace passwords and how to implement that in a secure manner is going to be very, very important. But another honorable mention that I want to throw out there as well is threat detection and response. So your EDRs, your XDRs, MDR, all of that. This is always critical, let's be honest, but it's evolving now because now the AI stuff is getting integrated into some of these tooling, all into the detection and the response and stuff like that. So staying on top of AI and learning the current tool set that you have, because your tool set is evolving as technology is evolving. So if you're using like CrowdStrike or if you're using, whatever you're using, they're going to be starting, they already have started to integrate some AI pieces into that, new features. It's going to give you more options now and more power in how you are basically triaging these alerts and everything like that. So you need to stay on top of that as well, but this is going to be an emerging area that's going to be very future-proof if you can stay on top of it. And also your GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. This is one of those things that are always critical as well, but it's going to be very future-proof in these highly regulated industries. I think that one is a pretty good staying power. That one's going to be, standing the test of time for sure. So I wanted to call that one out. But if you want some guidance on, where to start with this stuff, I know that's like, it could feel pretty overwhelming when you hear all the different future-proofed areas out there. And there's definitely more as well that I didn't have time to touch on in this video. But if you'd like some help getting started in cybersecurity and just really getting a game plan to help accelerate this whole process to get into the field, check the link down in the description below and fill out a brief survey and I will help get you on the path.